In the last video, we looked at how a teenager pushing 30 and his age unequivalent best friend would be brought back by the Hollywood studio machine for the Well Wicked sequel. This time, we conclusively look at how the oldest 17-year-old ever would conclude the trilogy of time travel stuck in the Old West with an inoperative time machine brought to us by the Hollywood studio machine. How does the final chapter of the trilogy hold up in the present? Feel free to like and subscribe as we for one last time go back to the future. In 1990, at the dawn of a new decade, Back to the Future 3 would see the saga continue and conclude in the Old West of California, not Texas. Due to a weather issue, the Doc gets sent from 1955 to 1885.
1885!
If you were wondering, can the Doc and young Marty McFly have 5 minutes to pat themselves on the back after preventing Biff from perverting history? The answer, quite simply, is no, they cannot.
The future is dark, now let's go home! Let's get our asses back to the future!
Hence, back-to-back sequels. Doc has left the time machine to sit in time for Marty to pick up in the past to get his ass back to the future, where he finally, at almost 30, can go back to being 17-year-old Marty McFly, playing his guitar too darn loud.
You're just too darn loud.
With his loving, oh yeah, that was 5 years ago. His girlfriend metamorphosized into a moose.
Rose.
How many kids?
And the boomer movie makers want to make a cowboy picture. Oh, in that case, Calvin Klein can't go back to the future and become Marty McFly. He has to go back not to the future and become Clint Eastwood.
Clint Eastwood. Clint Eastwood.
What kind of stupid name is that?
Apparently, the baby boomer movie makers get to pat themselves on the back and have McFox Not Fly imitate the fake Clint Eastwood from California, not Texas.
Great friggin' flick! The guy is brilliant!
I mean, obviously they can't have the real Clint Eastwood from Down Under.
You know who that was? Clint Eastwood!
What kind of stupid name is that?
Michael J. Crocodile Dundee.
And thus, ladies, man and gentlemen, Clint Eastwood would have to travel back to the Old West of California, not Texas, to bring back the Doc, who gave him specific instructions
I gave you explicit instructions
to f*** off
not to come here.
and leave him alone to live and die in the Old West.
Iced tea!
However, Eastwood cannot take the fact the Doc won't live to be 200 and overrides those instructions.
And I'm going back to 1885 and I'm bringing you home.
I gave you explicit instructions.
Shut up.
But it's good to see you, Marty.
Hence we have not an 80s suburban high school romance cool rock band movie, but a cowboy picture. Younger Gen X and older millennial audiences would be metaphorically and literally dictated to by the all-knowing baby boomers in terms of what genre they will now unconditionally embrace and love. A fucking Western. A genre we positively didn't grow up with whatsoever.
When I was a kid, I always wanted to be a cowboy.
Shut up.
Clint McThirty-year-old ends up in the same town but a different time, where after being nearly murdered for doing a shitty Michael Jackson impression, whatever this guy's name is today, and the Doc are reunited in a cowboy movie. The Doc changes his mind about being left the hell alone to live and die in the Old West
Get the DeLorean and get ourselves back to the future.
when he discovers he's not immortal and, most importantly, homemade iced tea gets repetitive.
Iced tea!
OG, original gangster. OG, original gangster. OG, original.
Shut up.
The dynamic duo once again agree it's time to go back
To the future!
However, all of that is complicated, not just by getting the DeLorean up to 88. No. The Doc meets himself a pretty little woman of that.
Life.
The chick from the only other cowboy movie from that time period,
That's Cowboy Gill's woman.
Hi. Life.
where a young Joaquin Phoenix is using
Back to the future!
to conceal his naughty movie collection.
No, Graham, this isn't mine.
He really should have been George McFly in it.
What do you mean?
Clint Eastwood, who used to be the chilled ladies man in the 80s, is now trying to block the Doc.
That's really no trouble.
Doc, she says it's fine. We gotta get going.
Because he wants to go back to the future. Definitely not because he's hating somebody else is getting some. Oh no.
I wouldn't want that.
I'm in love with Clara.
Oh man, Doc, we don't belong here. I wouldn't want that.
And if that wasn't enough, young Clint is called
Yellow.
by Biff's homicidal sociopathic,
Great-grandfather Buford Mad Dog Tannen.
I'll be back this way on Monday.
the one who tried to eliminate him because his Michael Jackson impression sucked. Now they're gonna see who can eliminate who first, because if you call Mick something, he's susceptible to any manipulation under the sun. A character defect we saw zero evidence of in the original.
Don't be such a square. Everybody who's anybody drinks.
Hey, the co-creators felt he needed to have an arc. He couldn't just say, yes, obnoxious cowboy man, I'm a chicken, you win, now let me go back to the future. And you can stay in this 19th century shithole.
Get him out of that shit.
We needed a showdown like a real cowboy movie, like the ones the baby boomer co-creators grew up watching. And thus, with the moral support of the most unnecessary portrayal of 19th century Irish immigrants ever,
He was concerned that people would think him a coward if he refused.
apart from TC and Far and Away,
Tell me you like my hat. A new hat.
Clint Eastwood has his arc and no longer succumbs to being manipulated by the trigger word chicken. Thus he and the loved up Doc
Clara is 1 in a million, 1 in a Googleplex.
can bugger off back to the future. Oh, but the chick ruins the whole thing. And Doc stays, and Marty McBoomer goes back to the future. Then a train smashes the shitty cowboy DeLorean that can't fly anymore because it can't. Then Doc comes back in an obnoxious flying steam train time machine and says some lip service.
Your future is whatever you make it.
Then it ends goodbye. Piss off and go home. It's the edgy 90s now. Nobody cares about the happy-go-lucky 80s anymore. F*** you, the end. Nobody wanted a fucking cowboy picture because it was a dormant genre the target audience didn't grow up with. But hey, the co-creators got the green light from the Hollywood studio machine, which was then patting itself on the back, so proverbial self-BJs were in order. When I say Hollywood studio, you say machine. Hollywood studio, machine. Hollywood studio, machine. To add insult to injury, later that year, the Western genre would be totally reinvigorated when Robin Hood would be the white savior to the Native Americans, sometimes erroneously referred to as Indians, not Pakistanis.
Dots, not feathers here. Feathers, not dots.
Then 2 years later, the fake Clint Eastwood from California, not Texas, would be at it one last time as an aging cowboy to avenge Robin Hood's sidekick.
I'm gonna hurt you.
To kick Lex Luthor's ass.
I don't deserve this. Deserves got nothing to do with it.
Again, adding to the genre's reinvigoration. So first of all, the third movie has aged like wine and not milk in my opinion.
Come on, this is a party.
At the time, a lot of kids felt a cowboy movie was a little odd for this franchise, but ultimately, it was a nice conclusion in essentially one time period. It was in the spirit of Time After Time, as in having time travel between the late 19th century and late 20th century, and of course, bringing back Mary Steenburgen as the time traveler's love interest.
You don't believe me?
I've heard some whoppers in my day.
In the immediate subsequent years, the Western became a reputable genre again. So of course, we grew up and got over our subtle disappointment of the movie's setting. In hindsight, however, it made more sense being a Western than if they went back to the 60s or 70s. After seeing Zemeckis' Forrest Gump, we now know if there was a Back to the Future movie set in the 60s or 70s, then it would have been some politicized, self-righteous, save the world vanity project. No thanks, mate. Give me Mad Dog Tannen and Marshall Strickland any day. The movie actually was pretty good. Just the audience it was marketed to at the time didn't resonate with the Western genre. We didn't grow up with John Wayne or spaghetti westerns. But be that as it may, the movie itself wasn't the problem.
Great Scott.
I know this is heavy.
As the trilogy concluded, what would be the legacy of Back to the Future as years went by? Feel free to like and subscribe, and stay tuned as we finally, for one last time in the series, go back to the future.